It's been quite the year for WWE. Many records broken, box office draws such as The Rock showing up, and we got a great idea of how WWE will operate for the next few years. I don't really watch the weekly shows because they're not that interesting to me, but I always show up for the pay-per-view events. Some of you, it's probably different, of course. The events are solid to good and always have me looking forward to something, but this video is about the entire year. Let's look back on it right now. In the beginning of the year, it seemed like Vince McMahon was back and in a more prominent position, but then a huge lawsuit came in and it changed everything. WWE wasn't under his control as much previously, but that would change in a big way after multiple pages described some of the allegations put forward. So he had to resign permanently and he sold his stock. Brock Lesnar was allegedly named in the lawsuit, and plans for him featuring in the Royal Rumble were scrapped. It was a crazy week because The Rock also took on a high position at TKO as a board of director. This news was big for about a week. As for the product, it was gaining some momentum heading into WrestleMania season. Cody and Punk had a great promo that highlighted just how much Punk's presence changed the WWE. Bayley won the Royal Rumble, which I actually didn't remember until now, and the men's match had two names that were likely to win it all. Those same two names I just mentioned. It was not the best Rumble match, not to mention Punk tore his triceps, but at least we got Andrade out of it. Andrade was back in the Rumble, Naomi returned, as was Jade Cargill in the women's match. It seemed like Roman and Cody were on a collision course even with The Rock's return a couple of weeks earlier. The following week though would change everything when it came to the WrestleMania build. The Rock just came out and took Cody's title shot. He surrendered it like that, and even though it was clear that Cody dropped out of respect to The Rock, he felt a certain way. This picture is The Rock and Cody, basically. Yeah, I got your title shot, smile. He took his shot as if he was the one hustling week in and week out, and this led to one of the most iconic press conferences in wrestling history. The Rock had mega heat from fans all over the world in the lead up to this, so you know he was gonna get a certain reaction when he came out. He had so much heat that they had to acknowledge it, otherwise it would look like a huge circle jerk. Mana, family, tribal chief, nonsense. The press conference was red hot and established The Rock as a heel with all the power in the WWE to do as he saw fit. Tremendous segment with plenty of heat and excitement, the likes we hadn't seen in years. It was not just the segment, but everything around it, because we did see great moments, but this was an entire build filled with fire and emotion. The Rock became a bit more corporate and showed just how greedy he became, and it's unfortunately the best role he's played inside and outside the ring in years. I thought Rock outshined Roman Reigns as if he was the champion, but it was a necessary sacrifice to make this one of the biggest WrestleMania main events. The storyline extended to include Seth Rollins, and many non-wrestling fans had a certain interest in watching this unfold. It was huge, and I hope people still understand how big that main event match was. Magic in every sense of the word, with Rock bringing out the very best in Cody Rhodes, who was a man that had his legacy on the line. 1 year removed from the biggest loss of his career, he was going into a battle that was much tougher than WrestleMania in Los Angeles. A champion that had his number and a final boss standing in the way. I'm smiling now thinking about this build because it was incredible. The WrestleMania build in general wasn't that good, but this title match was special. I had a lot of love for this story and hope it gets talked about in the future the way it deserves to be, which it probably will. The WrestleMania build wasn't much. It wasn't as bad as 31's build, but it didn't feel huge until the show happened. Other than that, WrestleMania 40 was a huge success. Rhea Ripley's stock heading into it was huge, and I remember seeing that press conference in her match at Elimination Chamber in Australia and thinking, damn, she's over, she's popular. She was reaching heights that were almost, keyword almost, because someone's gonna be like, what about insert name, that were almost unprecedented in the women's division. Looking back, this was when the LWO still existed. I think they still exist now, but I'm sure no one really cares. In A-Town Down were actually winning matches, even won the tag team titles, and I felt like the show WrestleMania sold itself. It wasn't the best build. The event as a whole was good. It was one of the last things Becky Lynch did in a actually it wasn't. This is the problem. My memory's a little blurry. This wasn't actually one of the last things Becky did, but it was one of the last notable things she did in a WWE ring as she took the L against Rhea Ripley. Bayley's redemption finally had a conclusion in a solid match with Io Sky. The Usos' match was one of the most boring matches from the pay-per-views this year. They were capable of way more, not to mention they were brothers. Twin brothers. They knew everything about each other, yet it turned out to be a snooze fest. Zayn and Gunther was such a great match that almost gets overshadowed by everything else. I do think we need to talk about it more, especially because of the story, and Night 1's main event was ridiculous. Rock was doing the most here, making it seem like the spectacle of all spectacles, and I will say, I like the match though. It makes the Bloodline seem untouchable and the favorites heading into Night 2 because it was going to be Bloodline rules. Night 2 had more to it with the World Championship. It was a quick sprint between Drew and Rollins, and also highlighted just how much CM Punk didn't like them on commentary. Drew was happy to see Punk being sidelined and paid the price here with a 5-minute title reign. Damian Priest cashed in and already made this a memorable moment for that night's WrestleMania. IShow Speed interfered in the US title match and took a rough looking RKO from Orton. In the moment he unmasked, the guy looked so out of place there. I'm like, what the hell is this guy doing here? And the main event was one for the ages and a modern classic. 1 year removed from the biggest match in Cody Rhodes' career, he's back under the brightest lights against the champion of 4 years, Roman Reigns. I think their match at WrestleMania 39 for their action might have been better, but I'm never choosing that one over this one. Hell no. Under no circumstances are we gonna choose WrestleMania 39 over WrestleMania 40. It's just not gonna happen. It had too many memorable moments and the best version of Roman Reigns, who worked very hard to make Cody the star on this night. I thought I was watching 2021 Roman with this one. Interferences, returns, John Cena looked like his stats got nerfed, Rock got a chokeslam by The Undertaker, and Cody finished his story. I don't care if Cody ripped that title and surrendered it the next night. This match and the lead up to it will always be worth it. It was always going to be tough to follow WrestleMania, especially this WrestleMania, but they teased Rock and Cody, which does look likely, although who knows. The Bloodline story took a turn with Solo Sikoa taking leadership of the group and bringing in Tama Tonga, Tonga Loa, and eventually Jacob Fatu. When it comes to this story, it brought more of that partnership between Owens and Orton, and also an obvious continuation of the Bloodline. Roman was always going to turn face, but this accelerated that. Rhea Ripley ended her year-long title reign due to injury, and it would quickly go to Becky Lynch. It's always unfortunate when someone loses their title to injury, but Rhea's is amongst some of the worst, because even though the title reign wasn't amazing, she had grown so much in her role and was on fire around WrestleMania time. Plus, it's a long title reign. Cody Rhodes and AJ Styles had a feud that featured some very great matches. Styles really stepped it up near the end of last year, and he deserves to be featured at the forefront again. So that's what they did. In front of one of the greatest crowds in wrestling history, they put on one of the best WWE matches in the entire year at Backlash. Wonderful stuff. King and Queen of the Ring featured some important moments that would greatly affect the entire year. Liv Morgan won the Women's World Championship. Becky's reign was just transitional in a way to establish Morgan. She was leaning towards a heel turn after becoming bitter, and it would show more when she went after Rhea's boyfriend, Dirty Dom. Gunther and Nia Jax won the tournament to get a title shot at SummerSlam. Gunther's match was great with Orton, who was a little uneasy because of gaining 10 pounds from eating Nutella. He was crazy for that one. But it was a nice precursor to their eventual match at Bash in Berlin. The main event with Cody Rhodes facing Logan Paul was great, but nobody bought into the threat of Paul. It was more about watching a good match, and it was just that. CM Punk and Drew McIntyre's feud was intensifying. Punk was always one step ahead of Drew, and he was becoming more and more upset. At the same time, McIntyre wanted back the title he barely held, and he got the chance in his home country of Scotland. This match was great and gave us Drew as a face for one night only, and it of course tied into the CM Punk story, so it cost him the title, and to make matters worse, wore a Celtic jersey in front of the Rangers fans. Obviously, it's Glasgow, but some people aren't gonna like that. On Raw, Chad Gable grew bitter over his losses against Sami Zayn and turned heel, but not everyone was on board with him though. His guys weren't really behind him, so he opted to replace them with the Creed brothers and Ivy Nile. To this day, his push hasn't materialized to what it could be. I think he could have been Intercontinental Champion at the time, but it is what it is. He was used for another important reason though. The Wyatt Six. They had been teased for months, and upon their arrival casted terror into Gable's new faction. The team shines in 6-man tag team matches, that's their strength, and it seems like WWE knows that as well, because that's what they've been doing recently. The I Quit match was the biggest highlight from Clash at the Castle. AJ Styles was trying to bring out the worst in Cody Rhodes, and it seemed to work. Money in the Bank was a precursor to SummerSlam, as it saw many stories intensify. Drew winning the briefcase, I don't remember having a sponsor, but he held it for 2 hours before failing to win his cash-in match to CM Punk cost him. This tied into the round story as well, with Seth being pissed off that CM Punk would get involved in his match. Those two were set to feud for WrestleMania 40, but it ended up being scrapped, so they were going to continue it here. Tiffany Stratton won the Women's Money in the Bank match, and it was a great match. Just want to mention, that was the best Women's Money in the Bank match of all time. But the biggest story from the night was John Cena's surprise return. He announced 2025 was going to be the year he retires, and said that the last time is now. It came from out of nowhere and left a lot of people stunned. Personally, I think it's nice that he closes his career like this. He doesn't need to do the part-timer thing, you know, like, he could just close it like that and do what he needs to do later on. Hopefully it's good. Solo Sikoa pinned Cody Rhodes in the 6-man tag team main event to set up a title match for SummerSlam. His guys took out Jimmy Uso, Paul Heyman, and were starting to consider Solo to be the new tribal chief. All they needed was the WWE Championship. SummerSlam was hyped up a lot and had some of that hype justified with the return of Rhea Ripley. She was back for her title and her boyfriend. Solo was zeroing in on the WWE Championship. Gunther was going to have his first title challenge against Damian Priest, and CM Punk finally returned to the ring. Yeah, CM Punk and Drew was nice, but this was like the surprise. This was a bigger surprise to me. His title reign didn't seem all that, and at times felt a bit transitional, but around SummerSlam, he started to feel a man that was trying his best to prove he belongs in there with the best talent. Gunther almost felt like the title was destined for him and was more interested in poking fun at Priest's upbringing and struggles. But SummerSlam also shaped up the future of the mid-card titles. Braun Breaker destroyed Sami Zayn to win the Intercontinental Championship, and LA Knight had one of his best performances in WWE against Logan Paul. If I recall, that was my match of the night, which is insane because of the other matches on here. But SummerSlam did a lot for all the singles titles. Liv Morgan was officially established as a major heel by taking Dominic and adding insult to injury to Rhea Ripley. Finn Balor turned on Priest after weeks of teases to cost him the title, and the main event wasn't a favorite of mine. I didn't like it that much, but it led to the return of Roman Reigns, who was officially a face after turning on Solo Sikoa, who was claiming to be the new tribal chief. This would become the biggest story on SmackDown, even over the WWE Championship, which saw Cody Rhodes feud for a short time with Kevin Owens. This would soon develop to become much more intense and driven by Owens' contempt for anything that has to do with the bloodline and of course hypocrisy. He feels as if Cody shouldn't be teaming with someone who terrorized the WWE like Roman Reigns, but also had a lot of bitterness over the fact that he wasn't champion. That's still ongoing. Rhea and Priest started to overpower their former partners in the Judgment Day like crazy, and they felt like they were levels above. The feud between Rhea and Liv started off hot and exciting, but it started to fizzle out and become dry by the time Raquel Rodriguez came in and sided with Liv. By then, it felt like this feud had gone on for far too long. CM Punk and Drew McIntyre didn't have that kind of problem, as they became stronger rivals of each other. Punk didn't like how Drew took a personal bracelet belonging to him, laying him out in his hometown of Chicago, and their strap match did nothing to settle the score, so Hell in a Cell was necessary. This was a classic and one of the best matches in both men's careers. It was a welcoming change from the previous Cell matches, as this one emphasized violence and hatred above anything, and in turn, the wrestlers got to reap the benefits and spill blood on the canvas. Drew played his role perfectly here as a devil. In that moment, he's begging for mercy with the blood on his face highlighted how manipulative and evil he was. It was a great way to close the feud. I'm glad that Rollins' involvement in it was limited because Drew and Punk had their own story. Gunther's title reign had a great start with him facing Randy Orton in Berlin, and this was a very slow and different kind of match. I didn't like it as much as others, but they sold it well as a rough and grueling fight that was going to take away a lot from both men. The bloodline started to overpower Roman and Cody, forcing them to coexist, and Rock for some reason returned for 2 minutes before disappearing. He even had that damn belt with him, but then again, why wouldn't you have that belt? If it's from the Ali family, I would hold that thing everywhere, bro. I don't care. I'm holding it to the DMV. I'm holding it in the airplane. I don't give a damn. This was a nothing return, but just a reminder to either Cody or Roman, maybe even both, that the final boss is watching. Bronson Reed had a huge push that saw him feud with Seth Rollins and Braun Strowman. For Strowman, it was some of the best stuff he's done in a while. Big men fighting at their very best is always something special, and it was a short feud, but it was very intense and very fast-paced, and it was great. One thing I didn't mention much in this video is the tag team division. The men and women tag division are mostly uninspired throughout the years, especially the men's side. Finn Balor and JD McDonough are holding the Raw titles down, you wouldn't know. The SmackDown titles have much fresher talent nowadays, with the likes of the Motor City Machine Guns and DIY challenging for them. I also want to say it's so strange to see MCMG in WWE. Chris Sabin and Alex Shelley in the WWE ring sounded so unimaginable, especially because they've gotten older, but anything can happen. The women's tag titles are always forgettable for some reason. Bianca and Jade have been holding them for a bit now, but I don't even remember much from their runs. The SmackDown women's division obviously had its fair share of problems throughout the year as well. Bayley was the champion in her run. It was nothing though. It was very forgettable. I don't remember much from it. Nia Jax is champion now, which was bound to happen, especially because of how Bayley's reign was. I thought she was one of the most improved wrestlers of the entire year. Justifiably, by the way. I do think she deserves that moniker because she actually is. She's really changed it around, and again, she's not the best wrestler on the roster, but she's much better than she was previously. But the SmackDown women's division isn't much to talk about because at the end of the day, they're relying a lot on the Tiffany Stratton story to bring interest into, and that story is still building. You know, they're trying to build her as a face, which is something I couldn't even imagine a year earlier because of how she is, but they're trying to build her as a face. Then you have the women's mid-card titles as well, something that's very different, something new. Chelsea Green won the Women's United States Championship, so there's that. She's done some great work recently. Has become one of the most over women's wrestlers on SmackDown. The crowd went insane for her. She had some of the very best reactions of the entire show at Saturday night's main event. So it goes to show you that people were happy to see her as champion. As to the Women's Intercontinental Championship, only time will tell how things go. The mid-card titles are in much better positions. Braun is a great champion already and has the if factor, plenty of intensity, and looks like a pure fighter when he's in there. It's good that he's paired with Ludwig Kaiser and Sheamus recently. Kaiser started to quickly become comfortable in his position as a single star. He's been showing a lot more as a silently sadistic type where he doesn't show that kind of brutality all the time, but is always capable of bringing it out. LA Knight's US title is seen as a golden prize amongst Andrade and Carmelo Hayes. This has led to a lot of great matches between both men, and in some ways made the title seem more valuable. Neither won the belt though, as Shinsuke Nakamura, who is reborn and dons a darker version of his character, is the champion. It feels like one way or another Shinsuke wins the title, and I don't even think it's factual, but to me it seems like he's holding a belt throughout the years. Now obviously the year had its fair share of problems. For one, Raw you'll see good wrestling, and I think it's better than SmackDown. With SmackDown, a lot of the mid-carders don't seem like anything. Like, I don't really care much for them. LA Knight's probably the only one like I really care about, and that's a problem. Final Testament's kind of been doing things. I think they've actually gotten better recently. I didn't care about their feuds earlier this year. Now with the Miz aligned with them, it's a weird dynamic, but it's kind of interesting. It works much better than it did earlier in the year. That's one thing for sure. Lashley's departure from WWE was kind of unfortunate. I do think he could have been a formidable World Championship opponent, but they didn't see it that way. And I always thought it was strange ever since Triple H took control that Lashley's booking went downhill. It took a steep fall. I don't think we're gonna remember these Crown Jewel Championships, that's one thing for sure. Survivor Series brought us one of the better War Games matches from the modern era. This was a wonderful story with Roman Reigns and CM Punk being the center of it. They had plenty of tension between each other that Paul Heyman had to minimize because of the ongoing problems with the bloodline. This was a great story, and it seems to serve as a precursor to what would eventually be a Roman Reigns and CM Punk feud. Only time will tell when that feud goes down, but it's very interesting to me, especially because Paul Heyman promised CM Punk a favor. No one really knows what that favor is. That was wonderful. Other than that, that match was great. I liked how Solo didn't want to bow or give up. He obviously knew Roman was going to destroy him, but he didn't want to surrender. He wanted to go out his way because at the end of the day, being the tribal chief is worth more than anything out there, and his portrayal in that match really showed that. It was one of the best things Solo did in the entire year. Just that moment there, he's like, I'm the tribal chief. I love that moment. It kind of sold the importance of the Ula Fala and the tribal chief role for Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa. It really sold it well there. As the year comes to a close, it looks as if Cody Rhodes and KO's feud's gonna continue. Roman Reigns and perhaps Jacob Fatu, or maybe even Drew McIntyre with the story they're telling of him going after the bloodline. Only time will tell, but hopefully the move to Netflix really changes things. We need a fresh approach, because WWE's problem to me is that they always play it safe. They're always scared. They like building these long-term stories when obviously long-term stuff is good. We need some flash. We need something that goes in and out quickly, like 1, 2, 3. And this is one thing they have to do. I personally believe they have to do this because the long-term title reigns, the long-term stories are all predictable. We all know how they go. You know what it builds to. Some stories do not need long-term. Rhea Ripley versus Liv Morgan does not need to be a long-term story, especially because of how it is. CM Punk and Seth Rollins, I understand that. That's clear as day. But this feud does not need to be long-term. That's one problem I hope WWE addresses, is the fact that we don't have much of the element of surprise, which is something that really helps in professional wrestling. They really need it. I really hope to see in the future. Other than that, there was a lot of positives from here. There was a lot of highs. CM Punk and Drew McIntyre's feud was wonderful. Cody Rhodes' rise to the top was great. There was a lot of good with this year. It's just, once again, WWE's formula right now is to play it safe and have long title reigns and long-term stories when they don't need to do all of that at once. You could do a part of that, but you don't need to do it all the time. That's what I hope is implemented in the future. This is the thing about them. They do these long-term stories. A lot of them are disappointing, but because of good moments in it, it's like, see, the moment's worth it. When it's not actually. Cody finishing his story, that's worth the story. Other than that, yeah, the year's pay-per-views is fun. I hope the move to Netflix changes things for WWE. John Cena's gonna be coming around, a lot of star power. The only time will tell how things go. Now, what's match of the year? Personal preference. This is the thing, personal preference. I'm going with Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 40. Second match, easily CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre, Hell in a Cell. Easy. They were the best at what they were supposed to be. That was the best at being a WrestleMania main event. That was the best at being a finale and a brutal, violent ending to the feud. Those were two great stuff. Alright, what do you guys think of WWE in 2024? Please comment down below. And that's it for this video. Make sure you hit the spear on the like button and perhaps the crossroads on the subscribe button. Peace. I'm out.